But interestingly, this is a sideline. A friend from Singapore sent me this article about the impacts of coal mining in Mongolia and the extent to which the mining industry also uses vast quantities of water and is depleting the water resources, which can be a very, very serious problem for China because China requires more water than it has at the moment. So that's just a sideline. So there's concern around the world about these matters, not only here. And first of all, I think you all deserve a medal when you could be sitting in your nice, easy chairs on this long weekend and the public holiday. You all made the effort to come here. That gives me great hope, Frank, wherever you are. In the meantime, partly to set the scene, you may be aware that in the 1970s, they chose the best agronomists and pasture agronomists across the state to compile these maps. The greatest variety of colours, which indicates the greatest variety of cropping, just happens to be in the southeast corner, doesn't it? It just happens to include the Darling Downs, doesn't it? Where there's adequate rainfall as well as excellent soils. So from the crop potential point of view, from the cropping capable of soil and land suitability point of view, again, there's the greatest concentration of varieties of agriculture just in this part of the world. And also, they put a similar map together for pastures because quite often, I think, we tend to forget our dairy farmers, we tend to forget our beef producers as well, and our horticultural people. But again, the most productive land is close to the coast and in this part of the world, isn't it? And to me, it's a tragedy that at that stage the government didn't say, well, if we can put circles around national parks, we should certainly put circles around these key agricultural areas as an investment in this country for the future and for feeding the world's population. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And I do wish sometimes our politicians and scientists would take note of some of the excellent information that has been available behind the scenes. Now, in 2010, you may be aware they held the World Congress of Soil Science in Brisbane, and there were two key speakers with our topic. One was Julian Cribb, who had written this excellent book, The Coming Famine, talking about the global food crisis, but also what we can do about it around the world. He's Australian, of course. And the other Australian speaker was Dr. Colin Charteris, who is at the International Water Management Institute in Colombo. And his book was published in 2011. And this one is entitled Out of Water. And some of the significant points from their addresses, basically, in Colin Charteris, he said that we're going from abundance to scarcity of water within 25 years. And then also there's the question of obviously feeding an increasing world population, and also the concern about recharge of groundwater. Because if we're going to extract more and more water, and if we're going to have more urban land over intake areas, which is also true in the city of Toowoomba, how are we going to recharge the freshwater aquifers we have already? And Julian Cribb points out that 24% of agricultural land around the world is now degraded. 1% of farmland annually is being lost around the world. Urban demands for water are increasing, which then means less water available for agriculture. And the North Queensland Register, which I see occasionally, had this excellent article in 2011, again pointing out to what extent farmland is shrinking across Australia. And inside, in 1976, about 65% of Australia's land mass was dedicated to agriculture. Now the figure is just 52%, and this is going down still. So farmland is slipping away. So we have the international concern. I've got an increasing awareness, I think, within Australia of what is actually happening. Having said that, the challenges we face are about saving the agricultural land for future food security and water supplies, and look at the impacts of coal mining, impacts of coal seam gas water extraction and the disposal of the salt, and the impacts of the coal seam gas network, as well as the problem of urban expansion. Now here in Sydney, they're going to have such a large increase in population, they're going to take some of the best horticultural land around Sydney, which will be lost again to urban expansion, which we mustn't forget. Having said all that, we'll see if this works. The first slide is a nice blank slide of my introduction. You'll be aware of some of these before, but this is again the Felton area, the beautiful cropping near Hodgson Creek, and then further upslope, more of the cropping. And the point was made that even if Amber Energy had decided to go upslope, by mining they would have interrupted the recharge area, and therefore I believe the aquifers underground in the Felton area would have been depleted anyway, apart from the fact that that project did not have an adequate supply of water even if it had gone ahead. So that was just the recharge question to be considered, as well as the impact of the mining. And I said to people in Brisbane, the other option of course is this, which is Ackland coal mine. So then you say, how can you ever rehabilitate that satisfactorily later on? Then comes to what is very special. We hear so much about the source of the Darling Downs. What's so special about it? Well, obviously the clay content is between about 35 and 70%, but that also means you have this high water holding capacity, up to about 10 inches or 250 millimetres. And this therefore means, as most of you know, that you can probably take a wheat crop almost through to harvest if you have adequately stored water reserves at the beginning of the planting season. So they're special because of the clay content. They're special because of the fertility. You can see how deep this Waco soil is, down to about 1.4 metres. And that's, of course, one of the cotton crops. As well as the inheritance soil fertility as well. And then you have other clay soils, such as this one at Capun, again growing excellent wheat crops. And what is very significant, I think, is the area of the great paddocks, the machinery that's being used, the way the land has been laser levelled, the technology that the farmers are using for this type of land is just amazing. But then there's the question of where are the nutrients and the minerals, and you find that most of the soil fertility is in this top 10 centimetres. So that's an example of one of these clay soils. So the phosphorus here is over 23, close to the surface. Even down to 20 centimetres, it's greatly reduced, which will be deficient. And further down, it's even more deficient. That's one example of the properties of the profile. Then we have a look at the carbon, organic carbon, and again the same question, that the carbon's mostly very close to the surface and decreasing as we go down the profile. Then there's also the question of salinity and salt. Now this is that Capon site, still growing an excellent crop. Now an exchangeable sodium percentage figure at about 6 is considered acceptable before you begin to have a problem with the soil structure, with salinity and so on and so forth. So surface soil is fine, 20 to 30 centimetres is not so good. And down here, 50 to 60, we're up to at least 25 ESP. And that's even true, I think, of the black cracking clay soils, that there's more of this salt further down. So there's an inherent danger if you disturb that soil, that if the subsoil becomes the topsoil, you've ended up with a totally infertile and unmanageable situation. So for the mining companies, if they go to mine, there's the question of how can we try and make sure they keep that top 10 centimetres separate from the next layer from the next layer. That's very expensive, and as someone has pointed out, it's never been shown with the black cracking clays that they can actually be restored after mining. Partly because of the compression of the black cracking clay soil as well. Get heavy machinery on it, as many of the farmers know, you can have all sorts of problems. So if you're going to mine, you've got to try and address these problems, which I don't believe can be done satisfactorily anyway. Then comes a nice blank one before, it's the question then of mixing of aquifers. Now this is again just a cross-section, this is John Hillier's diagram, but basically it explains that if you look at the Condamine alluvium, with the nearby balloon coal measures, it's a complicated system. As the water levels drop, so you're likely to get more of the saline water from the balloon coal measures going into the freshwater aquifers of the Condamine alluvium because of this interconnectivity. Now it's very expensive to try and work out how all these aquifers are interconnected anyway. I think as you sink bores, you're likely to pass fresh water, you like to pass saline water as well, and we need to try and be sure that the two won't mix. And I'm not convinced that with coal seam gas wells and so on and so forth, you won't end up with this mixing. I'm not even convinced that the bores that they sink will become properly sealed anyway. So I agree with Ruth entirely that you should not touch that Cecil Plains area in particular because of the problems you'll get from the interconnectivity of the aquifers. John Hillier actually wrote a full report on this that some of you may have seen for the irrigators. Then we come to this question of salinity again. Now this is, you've seen this one before, this is in Hunter Valley area. I was shocked to find that I think the Wandoan coal mine will have a larger area of coal mined than all these mines in the Hunter Valley. And I believe what's planned for the Savannah uplands near Emerald will also be a larger mine than all the Hunter Valley mines combined. And I believe our next speaker is going to talk about some of the health problems, apart from the environmental problems associated with such large coal mining exercises. And I certainly hope that Ackland Stage 3 never goes ahead. I think we must try and make sure it never happens. It's just the scale of these operations it's incredible technology, but it's threatening so much of our livelihood. Then just a few thoughts. You've seen the coal seam gas network. That's the very famous photograph. The difficulties of trying to work that land. Then we think how much salt may be extracted. Now this is from the Healthy Headwaters study. And looking at the Connemara Malone region altogether, we see salt does come down with rainfall. There is some salt in the rainfall over the whole region. So that's this segment here. The conventional groundwater that we're using at the moment contains this next segment. Even a small estimate, an underestimate of what may be associated with coal seam gas is this segment. And it could have a potential right up to 1.7 million tonnes of salt a year. And it appears to me that no one knows what to do with this salt. You've got these lakes at the moment where the water's evaporating. There's talk of trying to re-inject it, but if water's coming out under pressure from the coal seam gas areas, how on earth are you going to force the salt back down? It's going to be incredibly expensive.